Hello, my name is Chris Campbell and I welcome you to this edition of 15 News. The year 2019 saw many state and city-funded construction projects reach fruition. City engineer Lee Schultz recaps the year in review and gives us an overview of 2020 capital improvement projects.
So first want to start with one of our projects that we awarded the contract in 2019, but it got awarded so late in the season because we had to rebid it, that the work isn't going to take place until 2020. So just reminding people, because they probably heard it that it was supposed to be 2019, is our southbound Northwestern Service Drive project from Evergreen down to 9 Mile. So there's already a contract in place for that work. Contractor expects to start probably in March. As soon as the weather breaks, they'll get started on that road work. That same project includes a new pathway further north on the southbound service drive between Civic Center and down to 10 Mile along LTU's northwestern frontage over there. So that'll be a nice project to see move forward that we thought was going to happen last year. So also we have a lot of major work that's going to on major roads that's going to be happening in 2020. We've got Civic Center Drive between Lasser and Northwestern. You may have noticed construction barrels on that same stretch of road in 2019. That was actually DTE. They had major underground infrastructure that had to be replaced. The timing actually works out nicely. They we wouldn't want them digging up the road after we fix it, right? So they went and did their replacement. Some of the road repairs were actually covered by DTE, so that should make our work go pretty smooth in 2020 for that work. We've also got 9 Mile from Inkster Road to Beach. That's a major road rehabilitation project. It's mostly in a residential part of town, not a lot of frontage right on 9 Mile, but it's a section of road that feeds into a lot of local streets and subdivisions over there. That road's gonna have one lane of one-way traffic during construction, and it'll flip from eastbound to westbound halfway through, depending on which side of the road they are working on. And then we are partnering with Beverly Hills to do a road rehab project on 13 Mile between Evergreen and Southfield Roads. The city also has a road project on Franklin Road between Northwestern and our North City limits. It's a less than a half-mile long stretch of road, but truly one of our worst conditioned major roads in the city right now. So really looking forward to getting that one finished. Also partnering financially, because we share in the cost with the Road Commission. They're coming into Southfield in 2020 to do 12 Mile from Telegraph to Lasser. So there's going to be a lot of major road work occurring throughout the city, but they're kind of spread out all over, so we shouldn't be tripping on each other with that work.
The Martin Luther King Jr. holiday was once again celebrated in the city by way of the Peace Walk ceremony. Presented by the Southfield MLK Task Force, the event drew a capacity crowd of community residents and business groups who engaged in the walk and commemorative program at the Southfield Pavilion. This year's theme was Community in Action and celebrated Southfield's rich history of cultural and religious diversity, inclusion, and engagement, and featured a keynote address from Detroit NAACP President, the Reverend Wendell Anthony.
Martin Luther King, stand up for righteousness. Martin Luther King, stand up for justice. Martin Luther King, stand up for truth. Lo, I will be with you always, even until the end of time.
Southfield was the first city in the state of Michigan to hold a Dr. King Peace Walk, which took place on January 20th, 1986, and has continued to grow the tradition in scope each year. For more information about the MLK Task Force, call the hotline number at area code 248-924-9MLK or visit www.mlktaskforcemi.org. One of Southfield's signature events made its return as the city recently presented its annual Daddy-Daughter Dance. Coordinated by the Parks and Recreation Division, this year's event was presented with a twist. It was held at the Best Western Hotel Ballroom instead of at its traditional location, the Southfield Pavilion.
Well, we have been trying to establish a relationship with the Best Western Premier here in Southfield, and we thought it would be a cool thing to have the Daddy-Daughter dance here. So we're going to have food, which we haven't had in a while. We did some sandwiches last year, but we're going to have pizza and chicken tenders and mini hot dogs. And then we also have a cookie decorating station for the young ladies to do this evening. And then we have the DJ and dancing, and it's just going to be a really fun night.
Dads and their daughters had a great time as they dressed to the nines and enjoyed food, dance, and great ambiance for the night.
We're actually expecting to have a great time, dance the night away, and I get a chance to take off my uniform and spend some time with my beautiful daughter. It is awesome. I think it's imperative as a dad who works 40 plus hours a week, just gives us enough time to be able to take off and just enjoy and spend time with the kids.
To stay at the pulse of Parks and Recreation events, visit the Southfield Parks and Recreation page on Facebook or visit cityofsouthfield.com. Prodigious musical talent was on full display at a recent talent competition. Presented by Accent Pontiac, the International Academy Talent Show was conceived and designed to showcase area students' musical abilities.
So the Accent Pontiac students, we have our bucket band, which is kind of our entry point into music making. So students from 2 of our elementary school sites will be performing their percussion pieces, all original compositions on the buckets. And in addition to that, we have multiple performers from southeastern Michigan who are performing in the actual talent show.
Southfield Lathrop resident Laura Petrowski won the competition with a piano piece that mesmerized the judges. Laura chose the piece for a variety of reasons.
I really like how it's both beautiful and lyrical and has beautiful sound, but then also has some furious and almost angry parts to it as well.
Program organizers feel that events such as the talent competition encourage a healthy appetite for music, which in turn presents many long-term benefits for students.
So there's so much research that shows that music has a positive impact of students. So not only are students learning how to play musical instruments, percussion instruments, brass instruments, woodwind instruments, but they're also gaining life skills, they're gaining social skills. They're learning how to focus in a group setting, they're learning leadership. They're learning determination, and they're getting confidence from these performances. And in addition, there's plenty of research that shows that music has a positive correlation with academic growth. So students who are participating in intensive music programs show higher growth on standardized test scores and higher grades than their peers who aren't participating in music programs.
To learn more about Accent Pontiac or about various upcoming events, visit accentpontiac.org. It's well been said that Southfield has some of the most talented students. This talent was fully showcased at a recent event presented by Southfield Public Schools.
The Fine Arts Festival is a combination of all of our programs, the drama, the choir, the band, the dance, and the arts classes, all culminating in a afternoon or evening event where everyone participates and the public is invited, the staff is invited, just giving everyone kind of a little peek at all of the different things that our programs do here at school.
Participating students were excited at the opportunity to showcase their talents, but could also see it as a pathway to greater opportunities or as well-needed therapy to gain a greater perspective on life.
Before I actually started talking to people, I would draw to help my depression. It actually really helped me because it got my feelings out on papers. Even if it was morbid, it helped me a lot.
This festival is an opportunity for parents and other members of the community to come out and see the fruits of the hard work that we've put in for a few months. This is really a showcase where I want to do my best and show everyone this is what I've been working on in class, out of class, and all around. I like to say, I feel as though I've grown a lot being a part of this choir. At first, I was really self-conscious about my voice, but being a part of this choir has made me see that my voice isn't as bad as I thought. It's actually pretty good. I have a really refined voice, and I really enjoy singing.
In the form of arts for the community, a lot of people understand that arts has a form of connectivity and people understanding each other. So the work, if one artist can attach to another artist, which then goes to schools and then just to the average everyday person. So it just helps interconnect everybody and helps the overall community.
Organizers hope that a major takeaway will be that Southfield Public Schools offers the necessary tools and training to help its students take their artistic talents to the next level.
Hopefully they'll see just a little snippet from each one of our programs so they get a really good idea about what we do here at school and how hard the kids are working and the students are to get to the level of performance.
To learn more about Southfield Public Schools, visit southfieldk12.org. According to the Cerebral Palsy Alliance, there are approximately 17 million people worldwide with cerebral palsy. Even though this disease is quite common, there is still a negative stigma that surrounds it. Palsy education advocate Justin Malama talks to us in this segment of Unlimited about overcoming obstacles while having cerebral palsy and what it's like to walk a day in his shoes.
I was pretty fortunate, especially throughout my life. The cerebral palsy is a mild case, so I was pretty normal, if you want to use the word normal. I like to use the phrase I could walk both sides of the fence. I was able to understand what society would consider normal, as well as understanding what having cerebral palsy and having the affliction was. When my parents found out that I had cerebral palsy, it was a subtle thing. They noticed, I think it was 6 months after I was 6 months old, that they noticed I favored the right side more than the left. Usually babies are experimenting using both hands. I favored the right more so. So when they had me tested, they were told that I had cerebral palsy. The doctors did a really good job explaining things. So my mom wasn't too panicked. She wasn't too scared. My mom was definitely, both parents were definitely, they were very strong-willed in keeping me as normal as society standards could possibly get. They did give my mom a list of things that I wouldn't be able to do, like riding a bike, roller skating, things like that. And my mom very eagerly would take pictures of me doing the things that they told them that I was not ever going to be able to do, and basically tell them, you know, go ahead and scratch that off the list. It's more about willpower and your own self-confidence. There's a lot of things that people with this disability can do that they're told they're not going to do. So it's really how passionate you are. The physical handicap is not, it's a temporary limitation. I have found ways to work around the limitation, as do many other people with cerebral palsy. There are some extreme cases, but again, there are things that people with cerebral palsy in a wheelchair are a lot better at than I am. So it all depends on their own self-determination. The limitations growing up were a little bit harder for me to adjust to because I was so young. One of the major issues that I had as a child definitely was I had to have a leg brace on the left leg to correct me walking, because I would walk pigeon-toed. Sometimes I would walk on my toes so the heel would never touch the ground. That would later get corrected with surgery. They would do a heel cord lengthening to get me to at least put my heel down, because I would trip and fall continuously. A lot of times, one thing that I dealt with a lot as a kid, and it led to a lot of bullying as a kid, was if I ever strained any muscles, if I tried to lift something with the right arm, the left arm would instantly do something like this. And that was very difficult as a child, to get used to bringing the left hand down and keeping the left hand down whenever I would strain muscles or do something active. If I run, I would run, and as I would go, this arm would come right back up. One of the things that I try to explain to people when they want to understand how my hand works or what I deal with, I try to explain to them if they were to tape their fingers together. So I'll give you an example of that. If you were to take a piece of tape and you were to tape these two fingers, and you took a piece of tape and you tape these two fingers, minus some flexibility, a little bit of flexibility with the fingers, this is pretty much how the left hand would work. It does not have as much dexterity as the right does, so this is pretty much just a claw for me in some way. Regardless of whatever the severity level is of the cerebral palsy, we don't see ourselves as different, especially for me. A good example is I think everybody's left hand works like my left hand, because I've had it since day one. I don't know what it's like for it to be different or to work better or worse. So I just assume that everyone else's hand works that way. So it doesn't bother me. I don't feel remorse or anything like that. So for a lot of us, again, I can't speak for everyone, but for a lot of us, this is normal for us. So if you just treat us normal, we don't feel any different. For our normal is your normal. It's all up to the individual. Unless we need assistance, we'll ask for it. But until then, we'll just do it the way we do it. We all do it just a little bit different. Hi, I'm Justin Malema. I have cerebral palsy. I shared my story. How about yours?
The Department of Office of Management and Budget here at the city is a key department in the city because it gives or articulates the monies, where they come, where they go, and also how residents relate to that. Now with us here in studio is the department head of that department, one Mr. Austin Michaels. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Chris. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well. Now, one of the key components of your department is the presentation of the CAFR report, also known as the Consolidated Annual Financial Report. But, many persons have questions about that report because there's so many numbers in it. It has a lot of trends and forecasts. So we're glad to have you here to sort of demystify that report for us.
Sure. So I always like to tell people where the money's coming from. Yeah. And then how we're using that money to provide services to our residents and our community. Those are the main functions. It is, as you said, just a snapshot as of June 30th. For this one, it's 2019. But it also shows the changes over that past year. What it fails to capture is where we're going into the future. It really is just that 1 year period and kind of where we're at. So I always like to look at everything with a goal towards sustainability in the future.
Now, before we take a deep dive into this report, there's a lot of team building and involvement that happens with this. Kind of talk about, from the team perspective, your staff and what's involved in putting this report together.
There are literally thousands of hours go into this report. My deputy director, Hanana Zhu, this is her baby. She spends hours and hours and hours making sure that it is as perfect as it can be. I've got a wonderful staff that supports this. There's the accounting team, the accounts payable, the purchasing department, and then all the city departments that we have to work with. This really is a concerted effort. There's a lot of information that's gathered, not only throughout the year, but at year end, to get this into good shape. We have the guidance of the City Council overall, and then the Council Finance Committee. They have a big part to play in this. On a monthly basis, we get together and discuss where we're at and how things are going. So their support is key in this. And then, of course, the city administration, kind of guiding the whole thing.
Now, in terms of where the money comes from, we know that it covers like general fund revenues, expenditures, pension systems. It gets into the retiree health care. Let's get into where does the money come from?
Sure. So I like to focus on the general fund because that's the general operations of the city. And primarily where our money comes from, where our operating income is sourced, is property taxes. So of the $76 million that the general fund brought in revenues this year, 62% or $47 million of that was generated from property taxes. And that's our residents as well as our businesses contributing to that. The closest second to that would be state funding, which is right around $8.5 million. So as you can see, there's a big jump there. So we are heavily reliant on property taxes.
Where does the money go?
Where does the money go? Excellent question. So, just like we have one primary source of funds coming in, the property taxes, generally what we do is we provide services to the residents and the community. And the biggest service that we provide is public safety. Public safety makes up about 74% of general fund expenditures. So of the $68 million that we spent this year, about $50 million of that was spent on public safety. That's your community policing, that's your fire, that's your emergency preparedness.
There was much discussion, especially when we were in the recession several years ago, in terms of how the city was impacted by that. Where are we now with that?
So we are recovering, but it is a very slow recovery because of Proposal A, which limits the amount we're allowed to increase property taxes year over year. There is actually quite a gap between what we used to base our property taxes on, the state equalized value, which is tied to market value, and then the actual taxable value. And that gap has been growing considerably year over year and is expected to continue to grow. I think since 2009, when we had the economic downturn, we've lost about $85 million in property tax revenue that would have been generated.
Yes. Now, one thing that you get from this report, and just your position with the city, is that you have to be sort of at the forefront of forecasting trends.
You know, my word that I like to focus on is sustainability. So you have to project things going forward. My office is also responsible for coordinating the annual budget process, and we like to try to look forward as much as we can in that process to see, how are we expecting things to change? Are we expecting our outflows to, greatly increase where our inflows are going to be limited? So there is a lot of projection that goes into that. One of the things that we have to consider with that is our legacy costs, our pension and our retiree health care.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about that model of sustainability. If you could take an element of some of these figures in this report, what's one example that would let a listener know that this is a very sustainable and a very responsible civic financial model?
Sure, so that's when we tend to get away from the revenues and expense side of things and look at our balance sheet, our financial position as of the year end, specifically with regards to what some might refer to as the rainy day funds. That's our fund balance and where we are in line with best practices, where comparable cities of our size and our service model are at, and we are at a strong position. Yes. It did take some years to recover from the recession, but we are once again well positioned.
Yes, and many of the elected leadership here have raved about your ability to just really be almost all-knowing about where the other cities are and how we relate to that. We seem to be at the upper tier financially in comparison to other cities. So talk about that a little bit.
Sure. One of the things I like to point out is our healthcare, our retiree healthcare. We were in a fortunate position several years back where we did some pre-funding of that liability. We knew we were going to have to pay into the future, so we set some money aside. There are many cities comparable to the Southfield in Michigan that did not do that. Yeah. Recently, the state passed a act requiring a certain funding level for our pensions and our retiree health care. And because of that pre-funding that we did, we are in a much better position sustainability-wise than a number of our peers.
Absolutely. Now, another thing that you've been lauded for too, in terms of giving figures that inform council on what they should do in terms of staffing, because we have not had to do layoffs like other cities have. We've been able to avoid a lot of that, and a lot of that is due to the work of your department and your staff as well. Talk about that, how we've been able to avoid major cuts, layoffs, major budget cuts.
Sure. So when we were going through the economic downturn, following the Great Recession, one of the things that the city administrator at the time had said was, we're not going to lay people off. We're going to find a way to do this. And I think we can see that throughout the city, where just through attrition and not filling vacancies, people were picking up the slack. We had, people that were doing things that weren't necessarily part of their original job, but they were doing it because it was the right thing to do. And I think that throughout the city, the departments have kind of carried that mentality forward. Fortunately, we are in a position to where we can get back to our previous staffing levels, but we also take a good hard look at that. Anytime the question of a new position comes up, we look at, okay, how is this going to benefit our residents? How is this going to be sustainable going forward?
Now, lastly, what's one thing that you would like to say to residents, to business, to people who live, work, and play in the city in terms of our sustainability, our fiscal health moving forward? What would you like to say to them about that?
Sure. So what I would say is that we are in a good position. We are well positioned for the future. And I encourage people to ask questions. I encourage people to reach out to us, if they don't understand something. I love it when a resident comes in and says, hey, I'm looking at the budget. Can you just tell me what this, and this means? Yeah. I sit down with them for 5-10 minutes. They walk out of there going, good, I feel better. And that's why we're here. We are, here to serve.
Well, Austin, thank you so much for coming down to the Cable 15 studios.
Thank you very much for having me.
And anytime you want to come back, your name is on the back of that chair.
Hi, this is Veronica. She's a newcomer to Poets Animal Rescue. She was found hit by a car, and we are taking care of her and making sure that she's healthy. We're gonna get her fixed, and she will be available soon. She is an absolute doll, very friendly, loved at the couch, and we'll let you know more about her when we get to know her. He's a really cute boy, and he'll be available soon if he's not picked up by his owners. He's a senior Chihuahua mix. He's great with everything, cats, dogs, loves walks, loves people, loves kids. Just a sweetheart overall.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of 15 News. You can check for us on Facebook and YouTube by searching for Southfield Multimedia Services. For 15 News, my name is Chris Campbell, and we thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.